Hello everyone and welcome to another Pax Dei video. My name is Brian if you happen to be new to the channel, but if you're a returning subscriber, you already know you're the best. I thank you guys so much for pushing this channel over 500 subscribers. It really does mean the world to me, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy the Pax Dei content here. I got a lot to talk about because we're going to be talking about the unsolvable problem. I'm going to be asking some questions. I'm going to be giving you guys my perspective, both as a developer, but also as a dad, ultimately as an MMORPG fan, and just the way that I see things. But this is where the discussion comes in. I'm very, very interested in your thoughts, so I hope that you leave them in the comments below, and I hope to follow up this video with a comment section video where I dive into those comments and we continue the discussion further. But let's cover the news a little bit. If you guys have not seen, GeForce Now has been officially confirmed to be launching into, Pax Dei will launch into that service as a part of early access. This also then starts to lean more into controller support, because if you guys aren't aware, the game does work on controller, but it's not, I wouldn't call it ready by any stretch of the imaginations. But we were in Alpha 1, Alpha 2 should be quickly approaching, so I'll keep you guys up to date on any controller configuration and any settings that can make your experience much more accessible. It's something I love. I love playing games on the controller. Not everybody does, but if you weren't aware, there, now you are. Anyhow, let's talk about the problem that has really no real solution, or not a solution that we could all be happy about. And I'm not throwing shade at anybody, this is just where the conversation goes. D4RKH4I, I'm assuming, 34 says, what we're unclear about, RMT bad. I think we agree. Legalized RMT though, WoW tokens Plex, pretty bad and destroys the integrity of the game, and the dev values the achievements progression made through the legitimate means. It should exist and comes purely from company greed. I don't think that it is wishful thinking at all. People just have to start voting with their dollars and develop a conscious mind. So let's break this down. How do you get rid of all RMT? That's the first question. The second question is, how do you make it so that if a player works and has a family, isn't punished for doing so when it comes to a sandbox MMO? Third question, how do you also then account for the streamer, which didn't exist back in classic MMOs, who will beat you 7 ways from Sunday, and they're going to get paid for doing so? There's a lot about the state of the MMOs that is very different from where it was to where it is. And it's so easy for us to all have these rose-colored goggles that look back at the past and say, yeah, they should just do it like they did it then. There was just one subscription and that's all that was needed. But let's just take the subscription model as an example. Inflation has kicked my ass, and it continues to kick my ass. I don't know if you guys ever got to the point where you're watering down milk, but we've been there. Thankfully, we've been able to build back up after the chaos of the last couple of years, and the milk is no longer watered down. But inflation still sucks. It still sucks. It sucks for all of us, right? We all feel it. My dad feels it. He's retired. He's on a fixed income, and he's like, oh man, this was rough. This was a rough year when everything doubled in price. So, what hasn't increased? The subscription price. We have not seen subscription prices increase with inflation. What we have seen is other ways to milk money out of the player base. Do I like microtransactions? F no. But when we also look at things like Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, Netflix, there's a level of subscription fatigue, and we've seen the subscription, which is, I think, the best model for these style of games. And I want to support it. That's why I want to put my money into it, because I think it is true. We vote with our dollars. It isn't the be all end all. It isn't the thing that will carry the torch, because why pay $15 for this game when you can pay $15 for thousands and thousands of games that all include MMORPGs? But that's just one question to you guys, because if you are in that vote, quote unquote voting with your dollars, I push back and think that you are a vocal minority, because generally speaking, when we look at the dollars and people voting with them, that's what they continue to vote for. More of these microtransactions. And this could also be a very generational thing. It's one of the reasons why I do not let my children play those kind of games, because they don't understand the value and I don't want them learning gambling addictive behavior. So that's just my role as a parent. That's actually my role as a content creator, in which I try to educate people about the state of these kind of games. But I digress. Let's talk about RMT. RMT will always be with us. They will always be with us. It's existing in every game. Now, to certain degrees, you might see less RMT. Let's take Final Fantasy XIV as a good example. Final Fantasy XIV really generally, after you hit maybe 300,000 gil in the game, you have no need of money. You might want to go get a house, but that's just going to lock you into a subscription fee, because if you don't sub and you own a house, it goes bye-bye after, I think, 60 days or something like that. So there's precedence there. Somebody used Final Fantasy XIV as the catalog example, but I had to remind them of the very thing that that game also does. It has a subscription, it has a cash shop, it has what modern MMOs have. So RMT, though, also exists in Final Fantasy XIV, but because you don't have, or the game does not really truly value gil after a certain point, there really isn't a bigger demand for it. So you will tend to see less and less of it, but it still exists because there's still a smaller demand. It just doesn't mean, that it's going to be throughout. So the solution to solve RMT is to get a crappy economy, to have a non-player driven economy, so that money doesn't mean anything. Because in a game where money has a value, it could equate to power, you're always going to have RMT because there's going to be somebody willing to spend it. So because you can't beat RMT unless you neuter the game, meaning you might as well just make it a single player game then, and maybe that's what a lot of people want. How do you balance all of these things together? Now, you might say that somebody is undermining your achievements, but player A goes out into the world and gathers resources and makes money. They have lots of time on their hands. Player B does the same thing, but they go to a job and they take care of their family. And when they sit down at the end of the day, they maybe just want to play their game. Yeah, maybe they got a little extra spending money in their pocket. Now, player A and player B are friends. So player A just automatically just helps player B out. You know what, player B, I want you to keep playing this game too. I'm going to go ahead and pay your sub. That exists also in these games. This is continuing on. Same thing for the streamers. And the streamers are just like that, but on steroids. They're going to win every single way. So how do you balance and reconcile all this? I think the only and really most honest solution is to let the game facilitate that, to bring in a payment model like a subscription, while at the same time giving players who have a ton of time the ability to provide those resources. Now, I'm completely against all of that if the game just printed the money and handed it to player B, but that's not what's happening. It is basically just acting as a unbiased and anonymous transactor between the two parties, and they happen to take a fee which helps support the game. Now, it might feel bad, in this case, like, oh, I want to go and grind and do all these things, and player B comes in on the weekend and drops $20 and he catches right up with me. But that's also a sign of health, because if player B doesn't come back to the game, at some point you are not a monolith enough to actually maintain the game and its systems and its developers, because they want to be able to feed their families and pay their bills. Now, when it comes down to the concept of greed, this is a label that a lot of gamers just throw around willy-nilly, and they don't really look at the true impact of it, because there is greed. There is. It exists within, any industry. But what we really should break it down is to unhinged greed versus the idea that we need to make sure we're making enough money so that we can truly hit these goals and deliver on these promises, right? So I fault no company for wanting to make money. What I do fault is when they try to do it, sneakily, or where, in this case, let's say they decided to change the plan and say, hey, we're going to be a free-to-play battle pass microtransactions 6 months into the game, where originally the offer was, we're going to be a subscription, we're going to have a Plex token so that players who have a lot of time, they can choose to move that into that system and have their subscription covered. There's no way to cash out, so you're not necessarily saying like, oh, now I'm going to go and just play to earn. You're just you're paying, your time is covering the cost of your subscription, which essentially is already something that happens in all these games already. You just might not necessarily be aware of it. So my whole point is I appreciate the transparency, and I appreciate that they're launching into early access, because this is going to be something that becomes a conversation. What type of systems are we willing to financially support? And that is the only way forward. So at some point, you're going to have to look at the past and keep it in the past. You're going to have to look at the future and decide what kind of future do you want to build. And then you got to recognize that just complaining to somebody on the internet doesn't do anything, right? Because the numbers, the voting with people, you want people to start voting with the dollars they have. And they didn't vote for subscription models. And with a sandbox MMO that is focused in on massively multiplayer online, not the modern MMO, which is massively multiplayer optional, I think that we should definitely be rooting for it. And we should start to understand that they're not just making this game for you and this small minority. They're trying to make sure that they have a big enough audience. And sandbox MMOs constantly struggle because they require the players are the content, as is why you see the theme park model winning out. Well, at least winning out over the course of 10 years. After that, you see a lot of people just get pissed off that they wasted 15,000 hours in a game and complain about it. But you can't solve them from doing that either, because they're addicted, and then eventually when that honeymoon period wears off, they have a little bit of regrets. But I don't regret the time that I poured into these games, and I don't fault them for being, or at least considering, various options and being transparent with us. But that's just what I want to say on the subject. It's wild to me that we're going to be playing early access before Ashes of Creation's second system is rolling out. Anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out with me for the discussion video. Links are in the description. Check the link tree if you want to get checked out the podcast, if you want to check out Instagram, or all the other content pipelines that I make, streaming over on Ginger Prime and Twitch if you're interested. Otherwise, I just wish you guys all the very best. Thanks for being here. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video. But until then, take care.